All right, so good morning, everyone. My name is Jesse, and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. For those joining us for the first time, and we do have a few new groups today, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. And I want to say a huge thank you, as always, to all our teachers joining live on YouTube and beyond. It is such a pleasure having you. I know it's a really odd time to be a teacher, so we really appreciate you continuing to come in as we celebrate such amazing people and places from across the globe. So yesterday, we did this really cool program on winter migrations and migrations in general with the Friends of the Rouge watershed in the east end of Toronto. We're going a little further east today along the Lake Ontario coastline, and we are joined by Cheryl Chapman of the Prince Edward Point Bird Observatory. So she does amazing work out there. It is a really an incredible place in the world for migrating birds, highlighting hundreds and hundreds of species that come up from all over the world to join us here in Ontario. So she's going to talk today about migrating birds, what that whole process is like, what happens at the Bird Observatory, and the magic of birds in general. So Cheryl, thank you so much for joining us for the first time, and take us away.
All right, thank you very much for that introduction, Jesse. Yes, my name is Cheryl Chapman, and I'm with the Naturehood program at Prince Edward Point Bird Observatory, where we study birds. And let's get started. We'll take a look at what we do at the observatory, and I'll try and leave as much time as I can for questions. The observatory is closed right now for the winter, so most of this is just film footage and photos that we've taken here at the Bird Observatory. So HEPO runs a scientific research facility, and it's a laboratory where we study birds. We study all sorts of birds. We study large birds like this raptor, and you can see the band on his leg there, and owls. This is a large barred owl that we sometimes capture there. We study mid-sized birds. These are passerines or perching birds. We study a lot of those. And we also see a lot of small birds, all sorts of small birds. Some you might recognize. We see a lot of small birds, and you can just see the variety of birds just in these little ones here. And sometimes even very, very tiny birds. This is a little juvenile hummingbird, ruby-throated hummingbird. And what do all the birds that we see have in common? They migrate. They move from one habitat or one region to another because of the seasonal changes. So we capture those birds while they're changing habitats from one place to another. And we have to understand why birds are traveling, and that's primarily for food and weather conditions. So when it gets too cold up here, there's not enough insects, not enough berries, the birds have to move further south, and it's warmer, it's much more pleasant. In fact, most birds are not native to Canada. They actually live in the southern states and in South America, and we're just their winter or their summer breeding ground. So in the spring rather, they head north for the summer to find great places to have a family, and then they'll make that journey back and forth. But it's a dangerous journey, very dangerous journey for the birds. And so we can see from birds that they can give us a picture into what's happening in the world around us because they travel from place to place. In fact, birds have been part of our world and our culture for forever. Man has always had a special place for birds. We pay attention to them. If you look at any culture, you'll see some sort of bird in their art and in their stories. My favorite one is Odin, the Norse god, chief of all the gods. He had 2 ravens that he kept by his side at all times. And those ravens, their job was to fly out into the world, see what was going on the planet, and report back to Odin about what was happening on the earth. And that's what our birds are doing for us today still. They're reporting back to us what's happening on our earth, which we share with the birds. So those birds are migrating, and through our research, we've been studying birds and banding birds for over 200 years, no, over 100 years rather, 120 years, and we've been able to map out the routes that the birds take. So for those of you in BC and Idaho and Wyoming, the birds that you see are migrating on this western flyway, like an expressway for birds. And then in the center, there's the central flyway, of course, and the eastern flyway, where the students from Ontario and Pennsylvania and New York State, this is where we are. So we see much the same birds. So this is the flyway that we study, and that's right where the Prince Edward Point Bird Observatory is, which is found on Prince Edward Point in Prince Edward County. When your dad's the king, you get to name places after yourself. So we're studying birds that start out here in the summer months, nesting in Quebec and Northern Ontario, and then they fly down towards the Great Lakes. And there's Lake Ontario. Here's Lake Ontario again. When they come to the lake, that's a big crossing. Let's find a shorter route. So they fly along the shoreline out into the lake until they come to this peninsula. There's not many people living here. There's lots of beautiful habitat for birds to feed and rest. It's quiet. And then they can make the short hops across the islands to the United States and continue on their way down the eastern side of the US. So that's where we put the observatory, right on the very end of that peninsula. Now, I'm hoping because you've joined us today that you're curious about birds. So I would look at this map and want to know what bird makes this long, long journey way out over the Atlantic Ocean all the way down to Argentina. That bird would be a godwit with long legs for wading and a long beak for paddling in the water. This is a godwit. This is a cousin of the one that flies through here. The photo, I didn't have a free photo of a godwit that does fly, but that's what they look like, basically. The more important migration one is this one here. The bird that flies here is a black hole warbler. If you hold your hand up like this bander is holding the bird with your 4 fingers, because yours is a smaller hand than hers, that's how long the body is of that bird if you look at your fingertips. 1/2 ounce or 15 grams. That's what this little bird weighs. And he flies out over the Atlantic Ocean for up to 3 days, nonstop flying, no place to rest, no place to eat, no water to drink. And he manages to find these teeny tiny islands. Migrating birds are pretty cool. Pretty cool. So that's an amazing journey for a little wee bird. This guy up here weighs about 1 pound of butter. But this little wee 1/2 ounce bird makes that long trek. So we find the birds fascinating. They fly through our area and we study them. The information we gather goes into a big database and we send that information out to other databases, and then researchers, governments, universities can take that information and learn about what birds are doing and telling us about the environment. One way we collect data is we count birds. So here's a winter count of waterfowl. We've got our scopes and our binoculars. So we're recording what we see, identifying different species, and we've counted up to 300 different species coming through the observatory property. And then we band birds, and we've banded over 280 different types of birds. So what does a banding thing look like? Well, here's a leg band on a little bird. It's made of aluminum, so it's very lightweight. And each band has its very own number. So every bird that has a band has its own identification number. And when the bands are found, the number is reported to the central database. Then we can find out where that band was first put on, how long the bird's been flying around with a band on its leg, where it's been traveling. It gives us lots of information about the life of that bird. Sometimes they're colorful for the big shorebirds because it's easier to see them with binoculars when they're colorful. And sometimes the color means it's involved in this study or that study or banded by this organization. So they come in all sizes and shapes. To capture the birds, we get up early. We set up a net. This one happens to be the hawk net. So the nets go up. We have to have extra strong bars because the hawks are strong. If you can't see the net, that's the whole idea. The birds aren't supposed to see the net either, but there it is. It's called a mist net because it's almost invisible. And the birds fly into that net and get captured. So this net is high, and we're hoping to catch some of the raptors in that net. Where we put the nets, we keep the brush cleared away, and we call that a lane. So this is a net lane, and this is for regular passerines or perching birds. You can see the poles are much thinner, almost invisible. And in this habitat, we're looking at a hardwood forest with a big canopy, looking for birds that like to live in that forest. Most of them insect eaters, woodpeckers, thrushes, grosbeaks, that sort of thing, we'd find in this habitat. We also have net lanes in other habitats. We have about 9 net lanes, and they're all different habitats. This one has some open area at the back and some shorter, smaller shrub-like trees. So this would be for catbirds and sparrows and cardinals and small birds that like this kind of habitat. We have one near a wetland. with evergreen trees, we'll get different birds there. And our data shows that different birds like different habitats. Just notice on this net that there's a bow in the net, like a little pocket forming. And that's important because when the birds fly into the net, they tumble down into that pocket, and it's like a little hammock where they can rest safely. If they fly from the other side, the net is lightweight and it'll pop over to the other side and the pocket will form here. So the birds want to land in that little pocket. So once they're in the net, we have to take them out of the net. So every 20 minutes, we're checking the nets and taking the birds out. And you can see these birds have landed just right. This one's lying on his back. There's his head and his beak. That's his belly and his wing. He's lying in his little hammock waiting to be released. This one's gone in head first. There's his beak and his belly. And his back is towards my friend Keitha here. So let's watch Keitha take a bird out of the net. Just going to untangle the wings. And there you can see the hold that Keitha has. This is called the bander's hold. She's gently got her fingers over the shoulders and her hand around the wings to keep them still. So this is the safest way to handle the bird. Keeps it from flapping and struggling, so it doesn't strain itself or hurt itself, and it doesn't escape on us either. You'll notice that Keitha is wearing her binoculars. That's because even though she's just gathering birds from the net, she's also watching for other birds that she can count, ones that she sees. We put the birds in these cotton bags to take them back to the observatory so they can breathe easily and they're soft and comfortable. And we'll watch Keitha take this bird out of the net. To untangle them, this is a little thrush. This little one flies all the way to Argentina as well. So he's out of the net. Doesn't look too distressed. Into the bag he goes. Just wants to make sure it's secure so he won't escape. No point in catching them if we can't keep track of them. There we go. I stopped this so you can see the clips that we have on the straps of the bags, the ties. There's a number on them. Each net lane has a number. We're a research facility. Everything gets recorded. We record the date, the day, the weather, who is banding the bird, who is recording the information, what time of day everything was captured. Here we see a volunteer. He's putting this net back up with a long pole. If a bird were captured up high in the net, we have to bring the net down to the banders so they can extract the bird, and then the net goes back up. You can see the pegs and all the birds that this junior volunteer has, more birds there. The birds go off to our lab, and there's the laboratory, all these birds waiting to be banded. Most of the birds are processed and out within 30 minutes of being taken from the nets. Our bander's working in front of the bright light, and our scribe is recording the data as the bander dictates it. So we have tools that we use. We need to weigh the birds. We need a surface that we can clean. We need good light, and the window's actually open so the birds can be released right from the lab. And these are specialized tools that we use for banding birds. So you're going to see these in action. We use these for measuring the wings. These are tools for putting the bands on, and this measures the leg size of the birds. And we need good identification books because birds can be tricky even for professionals to identify. The leg bands are all, as I said, numbered, one number for every bird. These bands would fit a bird the size of a pencil. Their leg is the size of a pencil. And the bands are given sizes just like shoes. And this little device helps us decide what size band the bird should wear. So we slip this over their leg. The little tiny birds, the warblers, would wear that. A robin would maybe wear this size or this size. A blue jay would wear this size perhaps, or this size even for a blue jay. So we have to check and make sure because the birds are different, and we use this to measure the wing, and we'll see that in action as well. So this is how we band a bird. We're going to see Keitha here banding a bird. She's first going to weigh the bird. The scale's set up so that it'll zero out the basket and the bag weight and give us just the bird weight. So this little bird weighs 59.8 grams. That's 2 ounces. Or If you like those cream eggs, it's 2 cream eggs. Hershey's if you're in the States, and Cadbury if you're in Canada. I chose eggs because we're talking birds. So Keith has selected a band. She knows what size this style of bird weighs. And here we're going to see her. She's put the band on this peg. There's a peg on each side, and then she's going to open up the band. And now she's putting the band on the leg. She's put it in the round holes. She's holding the foot and the knee so the leg can't move at all while she puts the band on. That way the bird can't harm itself. So she's banding the bird first so that if it escapes, it at least has the band on and we know the band number. So as she's doing this work, she's reporting to the scribe the number on the band, the type of bird this is, what net lane it was captured in. And now what she's doing is aging the bird and telling whether it's a boy or girl if she can. It's not always easy to tell. She's looking at the wear on the feathers, the color of the feathers. She'll measure the wing length. She may look at the tail feathers as well for wear. So she's measuring from the wrist to the tip for that bird. And the measurement on that one was 90 millimeters for this Swanson's thrush. And here what she's doing is blowing on the bird to reveal the skin so you can see the fat. Their skin is very, very thin. If there was lots of fat under there, it would be very yellow looking. And it's very pink looking. There's not a lot of fat. So the birds need to feed first and then they'll leave. If there's lots of fat, they're probably ready to leave on the rest of their migration. So she's checking for fat and she'll give it a number from 0, no fat, to maybe 4 or 5 for very, very fat. And the fat's important for them to finish their journey. That's what they use for energy for flying. So our little Swanson's thrush here, Swanson's thrush rather, is ready to go. You can see the windows open. And he's released, and away he goes to finish his journey. And that little bird is going to fly all the way down to Argentina. He's just started his journey. And we have some raptors here. These are a pair of Sharpies. These are sharp-shinned hawks. And we'll see how we band our raptor because we have to contend with these claws and these very sharp hooked beaks. So we're going to watch this one. Hopefully it works. So we'll go back to the beginning so you can see Keitha extracting. Now you'll notice that the tail is sticking out of the bag and also its feet. So we've tied the feet and tail like that to keep the bird safe from scratching itself in the bag and to keep the banders safe when they have to take the bird out of the bag. So you can see how carefully Keitha is extracting this bird from the bag. This sharp-shinned hawk is hunting little birds. So it could stay here for the winter, and some do, but they usually follow the smaller birds south. So there's our raptor with his long wings for fast, dexterous flight. And we can see his long, long legs. Keith is going to show us how long his legs are. He needs long legs to reach into the bushes. And there's his sharp beak. And yes, they do bite and peck. Now, holding a raptor is different from holding a small bird, a passerine or a perching bird. We have to protect the bird. So she's put it in this cradle hold. And she's going to measure the size of the leg now with that leg gauge. She's going to move it up and down the leg so she can make sure there's no place where a band would bind or get caught or fall off. She's going to confer with another bander to make sure she's got the right size. And she's decided on a size 2 band. That's a bit small. I'm going to move us forward a little bit to where she actually puts the band on. She takes her time there. So she's got the band on its leg. Now she's closing it around. And she'll turn it a few times just to make sure that it's comfortable for the bird. It's not going to interfere with the bird's life in any way or get caught on anything as the bird is moving through. You can see how feisty he is. All right. She's also going to show us how fast her foot is. Look how quickly he grabbed her finger. That's what he would do for a small bird. He can reach that long leg into shrubbery where the bird's trying to hide and grab that bird and drag it out. There's the band with those long talons. So this is a predator bird. And I'm going to move us forward again to where she's examining the wing for us. So there you go. She's showing us the wing. You can see the blue feathers and these brown feathers. So these are the young bird feathers. These are the mature bird feathers. Also take a look at his eye. It's dark brown. If he were still a baby bird, his eye would be yellow looking. So this is a mature bird finishing out maybe his second year because he still has some of his baby feathers. So that's how we age the bird by looking at the feathers. And then we don't have the release on this, but he would go out the window just like the other birds do. And that's how we band raptors. After 6 hours, our days are finished. We close up the nets. On the net lane, we need to make sure it's safe for the birds. All of our banders practice to a bander's code of ethics where bird safety is first and foremost. We would release a bird before we would try and keep it and band it if it were going to cause harm. So the nets are designed to catch birds, so we want to make sure that when we're not there, they're not catching anything. So the nets are furled up, as you see Keitha doing here. She'll roll those nets up, and we'll watch while I give you some idea on stats. Oops, sorry. So she's rolling that up. We catch between 100 and 150 birds on average. Some days we catch as many as 400, and other days maybe only a dozen or so. Last fall, we captured 4,000 birds from mid-August to the end of October, our banding season. And in the spring, we can catch up to 10,000 birds in a much shorter season from mid-April to the end of May. The birds are in a hurry, they've got a short amount of time, and they come in droves through the county. So Keith is tying the net up there so that the wind doesn't furl it around and unravel it. And we make sure that it's safe for the birds through the afternoon so they aren't getting caught in it. Now come fall, at night, we also band these cute little fellows, the northern saw-whet owl. He weighs all of 3 ounces, so 3 of those cream eggs. We put nets up to catch them, and sometimes we catch larger owls as well. So here's a band going on the larger owl. This is a lock band. It's a little different because this owl has very big, strong legs, so we need a different style of band. He's using his legs for hunting, catching his prey, carrying his prey, not like the little perching birds that use their legs primarily for perching. They don't have to catch their food with their foot. And the little saw-whets here, just so cute. So we'll see how we band an owl. Sorry for the delay there. So this is Keitha again banding an owl. So she's weighed this owl. He weighed 94.5 grams. It weighed 94.5 grams. If we convert that, that's about 3.5 ounces for our friends in the United States. Just be careful because, again, this is a bird of prey which has talons and a sharp beak, so the extraction is, oh my goodness, ever so cute. Ever so cute. He doesn't have to migrate, these little owls, but with deep snow and you're that tiny, it's difficult to catch your prey, which is primarily mice. They do eat a lot of insects in the summer, so heading further south into the southern United States and the New England states or along there, it just makes sense for them to find more food. They'll come back to breed here, and some do stay here all year. So you see the bands are larger. And Keith is going to show us how wide she has to open that band. There it is right there. Opening that band nice and wide because they, again, have strong legs. And she's got the band. Let's see if it'll go on. She needs to change the hold on the bird because he's got those talons. You can see how he's got 2 toes forward, 2 back. Zygodactyl, if you want a big word for today. It's the style of foot where you have 2 toes forward, 2 toes back. So she's got him in that little cradle hold. Now she can put the band on. And she'll come around so we can see that happening. She's going to put it on a little, close it a little at a time. and turn it so that the furry feathers on the foot don't get caught in the band. Again, we're keeping these birds as safe as possible. And when she's got it on, she'll do a final spin to make sure no feathers are caught in the band. And our little owl is banded. To capture the owls, we put nets in a triangle, and in the center of the triangle, we put a tape recorder that plays, or a recorder that plays the sound of owls. Because owls don't fly around hunting, they sit still. We need to encourage them to fly about and come into the nets. So she's examining the wing again, looking for wear on the feathers and the color. This one looks pretty even, all the same color. So this is a juvenile bird, a young bird. It just hatched this spring. And she's going to confirm that with a special thing we do with owls to confirm their age. So we're putting on an ultraviolet light. It's going to get dark. All the lights go out, and under the ultraviolet light, Keith is going to be looking at the wings, the underside of the wing. And there you can see hot pink under UV light. If this little owl were to fly up to a potential mate, he would see the underside of the wing. And he would say, oh, you're a very young bird. Maybe you don't know how to take care of a family yet. Maybe you don't even know how to take care of yourself. I'm not interested. You're too young. So that's what birds see. That's what the owls see. Birds see ultraviolet light. So they see different colors from us. If we go put the lights back on, just move this forward a little bit. Keith is going to show us, she did measure the wing, and it was 137 millimeters, so that's 5.5 inches, which makes this a girl. Girls have a little longer wings, owls are bigger. And here's how this owl can hunt. She keeps her forward-facing eyes on her prey, and her body can swivel through the trees and over obstacles and around things, and never lose sight of her prey. That's how almost all birds fly, is with their head can stay perfectly still. Pigeons do it. Their head stays still while they walk, and then they move their head, then they walk, then they move their head. That's why they have that funny pigeon walk. So that's banding a northern saw-whet owl. And we can band, we did 170 in one night. This year we did 242 owls. It was a slower year because our fall was very protracted. It was long fall. There wasn't much impetus or push for the birds to fly. So we'll take a look at that wing thing again, because that's just so cool. You see some brown feathers here and gray feathers here, and a couple of brown feathers here. These are the new adult feathers coming in. These are the old baby feathers. So we're going to flip this wing over. This part will become the bottom of the screen, and you'll see these flight feathers, all of this under UV light. And there it is. Those baby feathers saying, I'm too young to be a parent. And these mature feathers saying, but soon I'll be ready to be a parent. When all of this is gone, the pink, these feathers will be replaced. The wing will look like this, and then other birds will know that this is a mature adult who survived a whole year by itself and would make a good parent. It's kind of a cool thing. We record all this information that we find about birds. We put that into research, into data banks that researchers can use. The researchers tell us what's going on from the patterns that they're seeing. And that helps us to understand what's going on and what we need to do to make changes to make it better. Because our birds are in trouble. And if our birds are in trouble, we are in trouble. We share this planet. Just like Odin's ravens, they're reporting to us that things are not good on planet Earth. And when we don't have a lot of resources and money to put into conservation, we need to know where the best place is to put our resources, where we're going to have the greatest impact. Well, the question then becomes, what can you do as a student or as a young person? Well, you can help. There are lots of things that you can do. You can become a bird watcher. It's much easier to protect and conserve something that you know and understand. And once you start watching a few birds, it's pretty addictive. You can keep your cat indoors. Cats kill a lot of birds. In Canada, cats kill 350 million birds. In the United States, 2.4 billion birds, rather. I want some math again. 38% of those numbers were killed by house cats, people's pets who have food in their house and don't need to kill birds. It's a lot of dead birds. Put some decals on the outside of your window or paint on your outside of your window, particularly during migration season, to help birds see that there's glass there. They can't see the glass on the outside. They see reflection of other spaces and think they can fly through there. So make your windows bird friendly. Create bird friendly spaces. If you live in an apartment and only have a balcony, you can still put out bird seed and water dishes. If you have a yard, you can put in plants that birds like with seeds and berries. You can put out bird feeders, bird baths, bird houses, lots of things you can do in your own spaces. You can join a conservation group and stay informed and take action with like-minded people. So there's a lot of things that you can do as a young person to help birds. So that's my presentation on what we do at the Bird Observatory. And I'm ready for questions anytime.
Fantastic. Well, Cheryl, that was great. Very rarely do we get a presentation that talks about Cadbury cream egg-sized birds. Odin's Ravens has the coolest bird feeder snowman of all time. And we get some UV owls for good measure, which, by the way, the entire YouTube group of many hundreds of kids watching this think that is the cutest thing that they've ever seen in their lives. Cheryl, but you've just brought up your bird feeders in your backyard. We've got the turkeys escaping on the back of the property.
They're still feeding. They may come back up to the house.
Perfect. Well, we'll keep checking in on them. But I'll bring you in now for questions. We're going to try and get through at least one round of questions with all our classes and take some from YouTube as well. So welcome in, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. And this has been a really, really fun presentation. Let's go to Crestview first. Miss Clagath's class, grade 3-4, is joining us for the first time. If you want to come in for a question, go for it.
The questions that a lot of the children wanted to know is, so when the birds fly south to places like Argentina, how do we know that they've got there? Are there scientists in South America that look at the banded birds and report back to you? How do we know? That was the big question.
That's a brilliant question. And yes, that's exactly what happens. PEPO is one of 29 stations in the Canadian Migratory Monitoring Network, but there are banding labs all over the world. There are lots in the United States, Mexico, South America, and they're doing exactly the same thing we are doing, capturing birds, banding birds. If we capture a bird that has a band on it, we send that information into the database, and that lab that banded that bird can find out that information. We found a bird, a little tiny warbler, and we reported the band. It had been banded in Pelee Island. There's a lab there, and it had been flying back and forth for 18 years from Mexico to Canada for a little teeny bird like that. And we found a sharp-shinned hawk that had been banded in Mexico, and we read its band, reported the number, and that hawk had been flying back and forth, the one that we saw being banded, similar type of bird, for 9 years. This was its 10th journey back to Canada when we captured it. So yes, that's how we track birds globally.
Very, very cool. Great question, guys. All right, let's go to Madam Sarah's class, joining us in Ottawa. If you have a question for us, just demute your mic and you're good to go.
Hi.
Hi.
How many birds migrate to Canada?
Well, 250 billion birds cross the southern border in the United States heading for Canada. 250 billion of those make it across the states into Canada. So that's a rough idea of how many birds. It's difficult to get an accurate number, but about 250 billion birds cross the Canadian-US border. Those birds are heading mostly to the boreal forests, further north to the tundra for some of them. So that's a ballpark number, yeah. But there's a lot of birds lost on the way.
Just in case the question was about species too, I mean, it's a huge number, 250 billion. How many different kinds of birds are actually crossing our borders?
Birds. I would say there's probably about 400 different species of birds crossing the border. There are 10,000 different species of birds in the world. We have 900 different species in North America, and some of those are resident birds, like our turkeys here. They don't migrate, but a vast majority do migrate. Some of them not all the way to Canada. They may just change places. Yeah. A good way to see how birds are moving or where they're moving to is to use a bird guide. They usually have maps that show the birds' ranges, where they live year-round, where they migrate to in the spring to breed, and where they winter. So those range maps are helpful for that kind of information.
Yeah. Bird loving is probably, you know, the most common of all the animal loves in the world. There's a whole slew of resources out there that you guys can use to track individual birds, track bird species. The Cornell Lab for Ornithology is an incredible resource. Pretty much every bird group mentions that. So I'll try and get up a banner with that on the screen that you guys can check out later. So many fantastic resources for birds out there. So great question.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to go to Ms. Gallen's class in just a second in Guelph, but I want to take a couple from YouTube first. So in At Glen, Pennsylvania, our favorite Pennsylvania town, we've had every school there, I think, join us over the last few months. Daphne wants to know, how do the birds not get hurt by the nets, and how do they not suffocate in the bags? People are really concerned about the bird welfare in this whole process.
Yes, and so are we. So the nets, as you could see in the videos, were very thin, fine nets. They're very soft. So the birds, it's just like if you ran into a very sheer fabric like you have on some windows and that sort of thing. It's very gentle, and when they're extracting the birds, they're being very, very careful. They back the bird out of the net, so they unwrap them, and then in the bags we use cotton bags because you can breathe through cotton. We wouldn't use plastic, that would suffocate the birds. But if you have a pillowcase, you just hold the fabric of the pillowcase across your face, or even your shirt sleeve across your face, you can breathe through it. Just like a scarf, you can breathe through a scarf over your face. So the birds can breathe in there, and it's a little bit darker. It's calm for them. So for the most part, they're very still in the bag, just resting. They're waiting for an opportunity to get away. They're just waiting, saving their energy in case we open a bag carelessly and they can fly out. So they're comfortable in there.
Great question, guys. Let's head to St. Martin of Tours, Mr. Reed's class, kindergartners. How many different species of bird do you track, Cheryl?
We have caught 230 different types of birds, 280 different types of birds altogether. We've had, this past fall, we captured 199 different types of birds in our nets. So over 25 years, we've captured 280 different types of birds. But it depends on the season, who's flying through and who actually gets caught in our trap. There's lots and lots of birds that don't go into our nets. But we have captured ducks in our nets. We don't normally ban the shore birds, but if they get caught in our net, we will try to ban them. The only bird we caught that we couldn't ban was a turkey vulture, because turkey vultures have a really gross habit of cooling themselves down by peeing on their legs. Gross. And that would make the band corrode and might cause harm to the bird if the band starts to break down. So we don't ban turkey vultures. But that's the only one we don't ban.
The best possible reason to not do science.
Yes.
All right, I'm going to go to Guelph, Ms. Gallen's class, grade 3s. If you guys want to come on in, go for it.
Absolutely. Thank you for teaching us about birds this morning. We're learning a lot. We're wondering about feeding the birds in the autumn time. Does that prevent them or stop them from migrating? Like if you're feeding birds at your bird feeder, well, then they might not migrate?
No. It's a very good question, and it's a very thoughtful one. But no, the birds are hardwired to migrate. They have to go. So they will appreciate being able to stock up and fatten up and have more energy reserve. So you're actually helping the birds with their migration by feeding them at their feeders, so that they can fatten up and have the energy to make those long, long journeys on those tiny little wings. So yes, please feed the birds. Please feed the birds.
Oh, we've never got that question before, so thank you so much for that. That was fascinating. All right, I'm going to go to Miss Kump's class, joining us in the story in New York. Welcome in, Miss Kump. Nice to have you back.
Hi, good to see you. Thanks for having us. Andrew has a question today.
What happens if it's cold already when they migrate? Won't they freeze to death?
Yeah.
Sometimes that's a very good observation. Sometimes, and that's one of the hazards of migration, is they leave too late. They get caught in a storm, or even if they leave on time, if a freak storm comes along, they can die and freeze. They can get blown off track. So sometimes, I know Ontario says they have recorded 105 different types of birds, but some of those are accidental birds that blew in here in a storm. They don't actually live here. So we don't have that many types of birds here. So storms can harm them for sure. They may run out of food sources. We've had birds come back too soon, and it's like the swallows come back too soon. It's too cold. They're aerial insectivores. They eat insects in the air, and if it's cold and there are no insects flying around, they're not finding food. They won't have the energy to keep themselves warm, and they won't survive. So it's a tricky business to be a bird. Very tricky business.
These have been some really thoughtful questions. I wish we could go all day and keep them coming over the next little bit. But what I want to do as we approach the end of the broadcast is highlight some great resources that you guys can use to learn more about birds and about the observatory where Cheryl's talking about today. So go to pepbo.ca to learn more about the amazing work that they do in Prince Edward County. Again, a really incredible place. 280 species of birds have been captured there. So lots of great stuff and resources to check out. If you're keen on decals for your windows to make sure that birds don't collide with your windows and other things that you can do at home, flap.org. So this is a Canadian organization, really great organization, does a lot of stuff. We've done programs with them before, so flap.org is fantastic. Cornell Lab for Ornithology on the bottom of the screen, pretty much everything you'd ever want to know about birds and migratory routes and all sorts of amazing stuff. And then two last notes. One is if you want to see bird tagging in action, catching birds in nets in action live on camera, we've done a series of programs with the Lucky Peak Research Station. So I'd encourage you to go to our YouTube channel, check that out. You can see hawks, songbirds, all sorts of amazing things being captured live on camera. No owls yet, which was a delight for me to see today. So thank you for that, Cheryl. And last but not least, for our kids, so some of our teachers may know today, we're doing a big nature campaign in May called Backyard Bio, encouraging you guys to get outdoors and explore the natural world near you and connect with other classrooms around the world. The Seek app. If you download the Seek app, it's affiliated with iNaturalist. You can go outside with your camera, take a picture of a bird. It will tell you all about it, where it's been located everywhere in the world. So the Seek app is an amazing tool for you guys. Cheryl, before we wrap up, is there any last thing you'd like to share with classes that you can encourage them to learn more with?
Well, I would suggest looking at eBird because you can get live maps of birds migrating. They take citizen scientist reports of sightings and plot those on a map so you can actually see the progress the birds are making as they travel north and again as they travel south in the fall. So this spring, as regular citizens like yourselves see the birds and they report their sightings, they're plotted on the map. You can actually watch the northern migration of the birds. It's really cool. So that's eBird that does that. And yeah, the other resources you offered were great. So, and there's also Bird Studies Canada.
Yes, they're fantastic. I'm going to bring this up on the screen as well for everybody. So you got all the banners today, everyone. So Bird Studies Canada, check them out as well. eBird, another amazing resource. Sorry for not mentioning that. And thank you for reminding me, Cheryl. This is great. Well, so since we've got a whole bunch of newbies today, what we do at the end of every broadcast for the people that have been here before is I'm going to bring in all our teachers today. So Crestview, Madame Sarah, Ms. Gallant, Ms. Kemp, if you want to join me in saying a big thank you to Cheryl for joining us today, for all that you share with us. You're all in. Thank you so much, guys.